Hello, everybody, and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. So, what does AI and machine learning mean to you as a marketer? Are you leveraging its power for predictive analytics? Is it making you look at your job role and the momentum of automation to come in the workplace? Do you realize its presence already in your daily social media life? What's your role in thinking through the strategies of what is to keep coming? Chis Penn is the co-founder and chief innovator at Trust Insights. He's an author and a recognized thought leader on digital marketing, marketing technology, and AI. And on this episode, we'll discuss AI and machine learning, predictive analytics, podcasting, how you should look at automation in your own career, as well as the importance of understanding bias. So let's tune in to a chief innovator with an innovative shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would please, for the three people in the world that don't know your experience, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career to date.
Well, first, thank you for having me
Of
on.
course.
Appreciate it. So I am the co-founder of Trust Insights. We're a data science consulting firm for marketers. We help marketers get better results out of their data. And I got to this by I actually started in corporate IT of all
Yeah.
things. My master's degree is in IT. And what happened was I joined a startup in the early 2000s in financial services. And what was update the web server became update the website while you're there.
Yeah.
Fix send mail becomes why don't you send the email newsletter, and technology became marketing technology, and that's kind of how I got to where I am today. In 2005, Google did something pretty amazing at the time. They bought this company called Urchin,
Mm-hmm.
which is a web analytics package, and that became, of course, Google Analytics. And that sort of took me into a different direction of, okay, how can we measure stuff? And measuring stuff became analytics, became data science, became machine learning, which is where we are today.
Well, I think our friend Ann Hanley said it best, referencing a speaking gig when when you both appeared at the gig, and she said, "He's science, I'm art. We're both right, so it's awesome." I think that was high praise. It's a good way of distinguishing a little bit of the difference with you and a lot of other marketers. You and I share a passion for data-driven marketing, especially in analytics. So it's why I was really looking forward to having you on the show. But what sort of drove that passion to do it too? I mean, you started in IT, but you got to really love. I mean, you've done a lot. I looked at your background. You've got a lot of different things you've done in your career. What's really driven that passion for AI and machine learning, and to where you've really put yourself out there as a thought leader today?
I like making stuff, and I like seeing what's possible.
Yeah.
And writing code to me is somewhat art as well as mostly science, in that you get to decide what the machine does. Now, with machine learning, and AI, there's a lot of the machine doing some of its own writing of its code and stuff like that. But you are still the architect. You are still the person who overall directs the what the machine does. And being something of a misanthropist, I would prefer to tell a machine what to do than try to negotiate with a human to ask them what
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
It's funny, though, going back briefly, you mentioned Anne Hanley, and she was the inspiration for the first edition of the new book that I just released this week called AI for Marketers. Back in 2017, she had said, "Hey, can someone explain this AI stuff, for normal humans?" And I wrote up a whole series of quick blog posts back then that I sewed into the first edition of the book,
Hmm.
and then I went back this winter to revise it. And I'm like, wow, this sucks. I mean, clearly it's just copied and pasted.
Yeah.
So to hit delete and start it over.
Well, she does. It puts a lot of pressure on you as a writer whenever you put the Anne Hanley hat on. So, I met you at a Martech conference and got to hear you present. You've delivered a lot of great presentations at a lot of conferences. I watched the one too on your personal website that was similar in nature. I highly encourage anyone to go watch Chris speak. He might scare you with tales of robots and how Google and Watson, IBM Watson, will take over the world and on the future, but seriously, you give a lot of great presentations. One of the things that I heard you speak briefly about, though, last year was how AI would disrupt public speaking in the future. What did you mean by that? As a speaker, what did you mean by that?
What AI lets you do is understand and know what audiences are talking about, what the market is talking about, faster than ever
Yeah.
before. And so if you are a speaker and you are trying to gain share of mind for keynotes, for the audience itself to be a better speaker and things, if you have tools and technologies at your disposal that tell you, hey, this is what is on the minds of people right now, an hour before you go on stage, you're going to be able to just talk about things in a very different way than someone who's got a canned speech of the same thing they've been delivering for the last year. You just press play and they may as well be a robot. I'm headed out to IBM Think next week. I'm speaking at this event, and this is an event which is going to generate probably 100 to 150,000 social posts a day. I want to be able, an hour before my session, to run a topic model on the last 24 hours of conversation. Say, okay, what is the audience expecting to hear about? And knowing that in advance will help me address very specific things that are custom for every talk, and be able to have my finger on the pulse of the audience. And so for any public speaker, I would strongly encourage them. This is something that you would need access to be truly in tune with the audience. Especially the larger the event, the more you're going to need it.
So you're going to use predictive analytics to figure out if they're going to laugh at your jokes.
No, not predictive. It's going to be text mining.
Not bad, not bad. So you and John Wall do, also as a speaker, the Marketing Over Coffee podcast, and have for years. What's it like to work with John and do the podcast? I've met him, and he seemed the same way, but has he always been that nice of a guy?
Yes, and it's funny because John's also a business partner at my company, Trust Insights. No, the best thing about John is that for the both of us, it's just like, let's just get stuff done, let's make things happen. There's no ego involved. There's no like I have to be the more important person. No,
right.
We're both just getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And talking about stuff that's legitimately of interest of us. And I think that's for anyone who's looking at podcasting in particular. You have to love what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like if you don't love the subject matter, you're going to make 5 shows, hate it. And, don't make a podcast just because everyone says you have to. Make a podcast because you love it so much that you would listen to it, and you do listen to it, even if you're the only listener.
Well, what's a podcast done for you as far as your own creative outlet and help, build your own Chis Penn brand?
Marketing Over Coffee really has been a way to have people literally put me in their ears, right? That's what a podcast is. And it's something that it's so important that people who are thinking about podcasting realize it is probably one of the most intimate forms of marketing. People are literally shoving your voice in their heads. And so understanding that's really important for how it's affected me. I mean, we've been doing this show for 12 years.
Yeah.
And it's a mainstay. It's so much fun to be able to talk to people and to, when you have a conversation with someone like, oh, I listened to your show. Cool. I mean, in the last year running this startup with my CEO, Katie Rivera, the number of new business calls we've had saying, oh, I listened to the show. It's like, it makes life so much easier for running a business.
Absolutely. Let's dive in a little bit more to the topic of the day then. That's AI and technology. Are you worried about creative really being overtaken by marketing automation and machine learning and all the parts of AI that, are really, becoming so prevalent to us today?
It depends on the context of who is asking. So if you work for a publicly traded company, you absolutely should be worried about AI taking your job. There was a fascinating piece done by a reporter at the New York Times who was at Davos, the World Economic Forum, a few weeks ago now, as of the time of this recording. And he said, in public, all the CEOs are like, oh, it's going to free people up to do more and better things like that. And behind the scenes, major banking and publicly traded company CEOs are like, so I want to get my head count from thousands to dozens. I need to, they say like, my golden ticket is AI because I can hit my profitability numbers, please Wall Street, and get rid of everybody. And they're all racing each other to do that. So if you work for a publicly traded company, expect that there'll be significant downward pressure on wages and employment because the CEOs just need to hit their numbers and make the investors happy. If you work in a company other than that, because privately held companies, startups, things like that are more concerned about growth, more concerned about productivity, more concerned about, differentiation in the marketplace. And so automation is going to be less of a concern than efficiency or scaling. Then I think there's plenty of room for people and machines in those kinds of companies where you will want to offload the boring crap to the machines so that you can actually truly focus on like, hey, I want to make something new. I want to make something that the world's never seen before, or I just want to do something silly. I was just having a chat earlier this morning with my CEO, and she and I were talking about a keynote she's about to deliver on predictive analytics, and had put in some song lyrics. And I said, let's go to Kaggle and pull down Metro Lyrics database of
Mm-hmm.
all song
Mm-hmm.
lyrics, right? And find, build a keyword finder to say like, I want to find songs that are about this,
Yeah.
and so being able to find cool stuff. So the technology for non-publicly traded company employees will let us be more creative and reach more.
Well, all that considered, I still see a lot of companies today, and it makes me worry that it doesn't seem like they're a dozen years away when so much of this is supposed to really take over. It seems like there's light years away. Tell us a little bit about how we should prepare ourselves and our careers for the future within a workforce. When exactly do you think the robots are going to take over?
The easiest answer to that is to ask yourself how much of your job any given day, week, or month is repetitive.
Yeah.
The more repetitive your job is, the faster those individual tasks are going to go away. I kid you not. I used to work at an agency, and there were employees in this agency. They were the lowest paid employees whose job was literally copying and pasting things from one spreadsheet to another. Like that job is
Yeah.
going away
Yeah.
sooner rather than later. Like, you could probably automate that out of existence today. So the more your job and your focus and what you do is multidisciplinary, the harder it is for a machine to replace, because machines, particularly around AI, are very good at narrow tasks. Recognize this speech, identify this logo, compute this algorithm. It's not good at, hey, talk to this person about this idea and then go over here and have a meeting with
Exactly.
this person. Machines struggle with that. So the more collaborative you are, the more multidisciplinary you are, the more creative, truly creative you are, the harder it is going to be for a machine to take all of your job. You will automate, and you will love to automate very specific parts of your job that you don't want to do anymore. Like, hey, I'm going to put together the exact same PowerPoint reporting deck I put together every month, right? You want that to go away. You want to spend your time on the work.
Well, you've talked. I've heard you speak about the biases in algorithms, and you give a tremendous example of what happened with the Atlanta Police Department. And there, if you would kind of tell that quick story, and then I've got a follow-up question after that about biases.
Actually, there's an even better story. Um, Last year, Amazon got into an enormous amount of trouble. They built an HR system that was supposed to use AI
Yes.
to predict the hiring of candidates.
Yep.
Like, we should screen these candidates. And it turns out the hiring system basically said, let's only hire white guys, or let's only hire guys. And people are like, what's going on? Well, the nature of AI is that it is mathematics and it is trained on existing data. If your existing data is biased, what conclusions the machine comes up with will also be biased. It's no different than any other form of computing. Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage out. Yep.
Bias in, bias out. And so Amazon now has to go and figure out, well, how do we get new training data for this algorithm to train it to say, like, yes, we should be hiring a representative sample of the population. Turns out they can't, so they have to just throw the whole thing out because they simply don't have that data. So they have to work at a strategic level, at a corporate level, to diversify their hiring first.
So perfect example though. It's even bigger, obviously brand name. Amazon. You've got Atlanta Police Department. You're going to have 1,000 examples of this everywhere as this continues to grow. Are you concerned? At least, do you believe that the biases will ever be removed? Because I think there will still be, as much as the machines will and the algorithms will improve and the machines will execute those algorithms more efficiently, you'll still have people putting in, with companies even as big as Amazon, adding bias to an algorithm.
So there's four kinds of bias. When it comes to machines, there's obviously there's the intentional bias, as the example. It's actually, I checked the facts. It's a Florida police department that tried to make a predictive algorithm that would determine who would reoffend, called recidivism.
Right.
And someone clearly put their thumb
Sorry,
on the scale
Atlanta.
because no, that's fine. Someone clearly put their thumb on the scale because the algorithm was 20% correct, but it identified African Americans as 5 times more likely to reoffend. It's hard to screw that up, unintentionally. That was clearly you put your thumb on the scale. There is what I call target bias, which is when a population itself, the data around the population is unusable, which means that, like, for example, African American healthcare data, useless, because there's such a systemic bias in society that you cannot get unbiased data. You actually have to build a model separately. There's source bias, which is where the data itself from the source itself has issues. So, for example, if you are building social media monitoring, or you're building a model based on social media and you're using Twitter data, Twitter has known biases to it of the number of users who are actually human users. There's about 2/3 are not. And so you have to account for that. And then, of course, finally, there is tool bias, the inability for a tool to be able to process all the data properly. To your question of will we ever get rid of bias? Not until we get rid of the humans, because there is no way for us to stop being biased. I mean, not to drag politics in too much, but look at the national conversations that are happening now about
Exactly.
race,
Yeah.
about gender, and sexual orientation. There's so much bias that what people have to say. It's you're not going to get rid of that. You can, and you absolutely should, at a strategic level and at an outcome level, say we mandate. Hey, software, we mandate that these outcomes be part of it. So you can say to an HR algorithm, I mandate that all candidates you select, 50% must be women, 17% must be African American, this, that, and then the software can accommodate within those parameters. But we have to be the ones to say, these are part of our expectations.
Well, and if we can ever eliminate bad decisions without writing an algorithm, then maybe we can get to potentially removing some bias. So, you have a background also in lead gen. And I haven't heard you really speak a lot, that may just be me, but about where machine learning and AI is going from that perspective. Where's your thought, on where lead gen is going with having the input of AI?
Oh, it's already there. Many of the more advanced marketing automation solutions have
Sure.
the ability to predict to say, like, hey, this is a lead that is more likely to convert or more likely to be qualified. Even in something as simple as Google Analytics, you could use machine learning to identify which channels are truly driving conversion, doing real mathematically sound, complex attribution analysis. I did a piece recently for a customer. They were all in on Facebook doing this, that, and the other thing. Facebook ads, Facebook this, Facebook that. But when we ran an attribution analysis using machine learning on what converted for them, Twitter was their network. And so
Yeah.
we're like,
Yeah.
you're over here, but the conversions are over here. So we need to readjust your strategy.
So, social media. You mentioned Facebook and Twitter. You've spoken at Social Media World. You're a professor of social media at the University of San Francisco. Is that
I
still?
was. I haven't done that.
Where do you see AI's input on social media?
Social media is AI. Every single major social network, what you see is controlled by machine. We as marketers have no control over this,
Exactly.
right? There's a fascinating interview with several of LinkedIn's chief data scientists about how LinkedIn makes its algorithms, and if you want a highly technical conversation, the podcast This Week in Machine Learning and AI has those interviews. But it's fascinating because as someone who has experience in these different technologies, to listen to that, I can go, oh, I know how to make LinkedIn's algorithm work better for me now. And that's one of the things that companies will need to do is have people listening, tuning in, understanding what's being said at the technical level, and then translating that into marketing advice.
So, what pieces of technology and marketing are you most excited about? I mean, we met at a Martech conference and the flavor du jour was CDPs, I believe, but, give that another 10 minutes and it'll change to something else and it'll be CD something else. What are your favorites and how do you see tech continuing to shape the marketplace? At least what do you sort of see ahead?
In production, as evidenced by the lovely sign next to me that audio listeners can't see, I'm an IBM champion in IBM Business Analytics, and so I use IBM's Watson Studio a lot, which is drag and drop AI for a lot of different tasks. I like that a lot. I like this stuff a lot because for someone who understands the architecture and what you want the tools to do, it speeds things up. I personally do a lot of my work in the programming language R, which is open
Yeah.
source. It's free of financial cost, and it is so flexible. There are plugins for Google Analytics. There are plugins for social media. There are all these different ways that you can process data and really build your own insights. And many of the tasks in marketing, other than customer data, most of our marketing data is really small data, right? Google Analytics data is relatively
Right.
small compared to like, number of interactions on Facebook. And so you can run a lot of this stuff on your laptop and get some really good answers. And of course, there's also cloud services. From a marketing technology perspective, I am a big fan of APIs, and I'm a big fan of bringing that data into an environment like R, processing it there, and then delivering insights down chain, or using a Watson Studio if you want to have it be a production system.
So you're in the Boston community. You speak, and I'm sure at a lot of colleges locally, and you speak with people all over the country. What are the kinds of pieces of advice that you give young marketers today as they start to look at a future in marketing, looking at the different ways that AI is going to influence them, whether it's lead gen, social media, tech stacks, whatever?
It is actually the same as what we were talking about earlier, which is you must be multidisciplinary in your
Yeah.
thinking. You must train in many many disciplines. You cannot just be such a narrow specialist, because anything narrow can be replaced. So if you are in college right now, be looking at sort of a liberal arts curriculum or more classical curriculum. Take art, take design, take poetry, take music, so that you have lots of different things in your human database in your head that you can apply to creatively think of solutions. There's an entire discipline in AI called transfer learning, where you build a model in one thing, and you can port that model to different things. That is something that humans need to do. If you have a background in dance, for example, and there are certain ways that you perform that get the audience's attention, you can transfer those models mentally to marketing, to something like social media, like to video and things. But people tend to think, oh, I do this, so this is my area of expertise. Look at how you can bring in all these different aspects of the human experience, of your human experience, so that you can come up with new solutions that don't exist previously. I just did a blog post recently on taking algorithms from stock trading and applying them to Google Analytics,
Yeah.
because you can do so much cool stuff with these things, and they are proven, they are time tested, but they're not going to be in the stock Google Analytics interface.
Well, perfect example is you. You went from a political science bachelor's degree to an MIS degree later. I mean, it's not the normal path for most political science grads, but you're considered a top influencer now. I see you on every prediction for the year ahead. Who are the other influencers that really, I mean, it's not even influencer, could be anybody in marketing, but who are the ones that are really sort of influencing your thoughts today? Who do you listen to and learn from?
The people who influence my thoughts today are not in marketing. They are in the AI
Good
field.
for
I
you.
am, like I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to IBM Think next week. I'm going to get a chance to sit down with someone who is both a distinguished engineer, which is a title given to IBMers who are, basically experts, and who has the rare distinction of being called a master inventor. Dr. Mandy Chesel, she's been at IBM for 32 years and is the head of one of the innovation practices. And it's people like this that I want to go meet and say, okay, how do you do what you do? What are what does your workflow look like? What do when you look for inspiration, where do you go in? Because I want to see how people who are literally master inventors, how do they come up with stuff? When we go to these big tech events like IBM or Google I/O or whatever, it really is looking at what's the latest and greatest. And for me, also spending time on sites like Towards Data Science,
Yeah.
KD Nuggets, and things like that. What's the latest? What are the newest things that people are coming out with and going, okay, that's something that I didn't know about. Listening to podcasts like This Week in Machine Learning, Goldman Sachs exchanges with Goldman Sachs, all stuff from outside of marketing that I can bring into marketing and inform the ideas.
Well, Chris, it is that special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most important and interesting questions that you're going to be asked today?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Number 1. This goes with marketing over coffee, but marketing or coffee?
Coffee.
Good choice.
With coffee, I can do anything.
There you go. Academy Award winner Sean Penn or his brother Chris Penn, the star of award winners like Beethoven's Second, Best of the Best 2, and Pauly Shore is Dead.
Well, Chris is dead, so you have to go with Sean Penn.
I'm talking about body of work, not when they're not there living.
I don't really watch either.
Oh, there you go. Well, Reservoir Dogs wasn't bad. He was good then.
I've been competing with him on SEO for 10 years.
I know. This is going to put you over the top, though.
Ha!
Deep learning or Skynet and the rise of the machines?
Deep learning.
Video or audio in digital marketing today?
Depends.
All right, I'll go with that. And
well, it depends on the audience and what you're trying to do. They have different functions. It's like asking, sushi or pizza. Well, it depends. I mean,
pizza. So, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Neither.
Oh my gosh.
No, they're both gritty, like bread products. I'll take like a sourdough any day.
This show just fell off a cliff, Chris. So, Chris, where can people find out more about you, follow your thought leadership, marketing advice, find out where you're speaking, and more?
Sure. Well, let's start with you can get my newest book, AI for Marketers, at aiformarketersbook.com. My company is at trustinsights.ai, and you can find me personally at christopherspenn.com.
Thank you so much, Chris, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you for having me.
Bingo. So there was my conversation with Chis Penn, the co-founder and chief innovator at Trust Insights. He's an author as well as a recognized thought leader on digital marketing, marketing technology, and AI. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, Chris and his co-host Tom have been doing the Marketing Over Coffee podcast for over a decade. Chris brought up a great point that we share regarding podcasts. I absolutely love marketing, and for anyone who's looking at podcasting in particular, he says, don't make a podcast just because everyone says you have to. Make a podcast because you love it so much that you would listen to it, and you do listen to it even if you're the only listener. I could not agree more, and that's why I do my own podcast. Second, Chris offers great insight on AI and tech and how it will affect your future as an employee. As he describes, if you're working for a publicly traded company, there will continue to be downward pressure on wages and employment that will be made through efficiencies with automation and bots. So if you work for a smaller startup or private company focused on growth, automation is less of a concern than, say, efficiency. The more complex and creative the role of your job, with more complex decisions, the harder it is for machines to replace you in your more multidisciplinary creative role, and take in all the things from your background to make you a more thoughtful and more complex and creative marketer. I love it when he later said, look at how you can bring in all of these different aspects of the human experience, of your human experience, so that you can come up with new solutions that don't exist previously. Third, an extremely important point to remember with AI is, as he says, the nature of AI is that it is mathematics and it is trained on existing data. If your existing data is biased, what conclusions the machine will come up with will also be biased. So great point, especially considering that there's no way for humans to not inject bias. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been my privilege to spend this time with you in order to discuss another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. And as the Terminator reminded us once, the Skynet funding bill is passed. The system goes online August 4th, 1997. Human decisions are removed from strategic defense. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th. In a panic, they try to pull the plug. Guys, it's going to be a while before Skynet takes over, so try not to pull the plug. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.